Welcome to a special Huddle in Place edition of Talks Within the Nine-Sided Circle with your hosts Noor Kyle and Mushtaq Ali.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Huddle in Place with the Nine-Sided Circle. I am one of your hosts, Noor Kyle.
This is Noor Kyle's faithful sidekick, Mushtaq Ali.
Yes, and I'm in Los Angeles, and he's in the Bay Area of California. And to update everyone, we've just heard news that, the cloth mask guideline that we discussed yesterday is now in place nationally, I believe.
Yes, I believe so. For sure in California, but people are figuring out that the virus is much more contagious than was initially thought, and that it can be spread by breath.
Yucky. So
the mask will not keep you from getting it, but it will keep you from possibly giving it to others if you already had it. And remember, a large portion of people get this virus and have no symptoms. So they're just typhoid Marys.
Yeah, so this is one way that we can all prevent.
Yeah, I guess this would be COVID Cathy's, right?
Sure, that works. So anyway, today we just wanted to have another literary talk, and this is session 12 of Huddle in Place, and we're doing Nasruddin stories.
13, isn't it?
Is it 13?
It's 13. It's one of those numbers.
Yeah.
It's a number with two numbers now.
Yeah, whatever. We'll put the right title on it. It'll be fine. So there you go. So what are we talking about today, Mushtaq?
Tonight, we're going to talk about the Sufi equivalent to the Zen koan.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, which is the stories of the Mullah Nasruddin Hoja. Now, Nasruddin was an actual real person. He lived in, well, a lot of people try and claim him. You know, the Persians want to claim him, the Azerbaijanis want to claim him, but he was Turkish. And his tomb is in Turkey. And I visited his tomb. You go to his tomb, and there is this huge, giant wooden door, and there are chains across the door, and there are locks all over the chains, but there are no walls. It was his last joke.
Yeah.
So Sufi teaching stories are important because they carry a certain amount of wisdom, and they're designed to give a little bit of a shock to the system. Something that will just make you go, what? Wake up.
Yeah. Wait,
and
what?
So, and so today we are going to entertain you, Noor and I, with some stories of the Mullah Nasruddin Hoja. Mullah is a title. It's a shortening of the word Molana, which means our master. And Hoja is a religious title. Fully it's Hojatullah. It means somebody who's a religious scholar. But Mullah Nasruddin was not a religious scholar, as you will see. Yeah. So, would you like to start, or shall I?
Why don't you start?
Why don't I start? So, one day, Mullah Nasruddin's wife was at home, and she hears a loud crash in the bedroom. And she runs in to see what's happened, and she sees her husband, Mullah Nasruddin, sitting on the floor. And she cries, "What happened? Are you okay?" And Mullah says, "It was just my clothes. They fell down." And his wife looks at him and says, "But how could your clothes fall down and make such a loud noise?" And he said, "Because I was in them at the time." That's a classic Mullah Nasruddin story.
Yeah, so you can obviously see that there's humor in it. There's this sense of, just getting your brain outside
Yeah.
of its usual brain box.
Yeah, thinking outside the box is the hallmark, or as we say, thinking outside the turban.
Yeah. So I'll read the next one. One day, Nasruddin began talking to a man from another town. The man lamented, "I am rich, but I am also sad and miserable. I have taken my money and gone traveling in search of joy, but alas, I have yet to find it." As the man continued speaking, Nasruddin grabbed the man's bag and ran off with it. The man chased him, and Nasruddin soon ran out of the man's sight. He hid behind a tree, then put the bag in the open road for the man to see. When the man caught up, he located the bag, and his facial expression immediately turned from distress to joy. As the man danced in celebration of finding his bag, Nasruddin thought to himself, "That's one way to bring joy to a sad man."
That's a classic one.
Yeah. Again.
All right. A traveling scholar met Nasruddin in his town and invited him to a meal at the local chaikhone. That's a tea house, a local tea house. The scholar ordered 2 lamb steaks, and a few minutes later, the waiter brought back a platter containing 1 medium-sized steak and 1 large one. Nasruddin immediately took the larger steak and put it on his plate. The scholar looked at him with total disbelief. "What you did violates virtually every moral, ethical, etiquette, and religious principle that there is," the scholar began explaining. He continued with a long lecture on morality and etiquette. And when he'd finished talking, the mullah looked at him and said, "Well, may I ask what you would have done if you were in my situation?" "Yes," the scholar replied, "I would have taken the smaller steak for myself." Mullah Nasruddin reached out, picked up the smaller steak and put it on the scholar's plate and said, "Okay, there you go."
Cutting straight to the chase, right?
Yep.
Yep. All right, so here's one. A friend of Nasruddin said, "Nasruddin, you should get up early in the mornings." Nasruddin replies, "Why?" The friend says, "Well, as they say, the early bird gets the worm." "Well," said Nasruddin, "I still don't know if getting up early has any merit for me. After all, I'm not hunting for worms." "I thought you might say that," the friend said. "But listen to this. A few days ago, I woke up at sunrise and went for a walk, and on my way, I came across a gold ring lying right on the ground." "Well, how do you know it wasn't lost the night before that?" asked Nasruddin. "I'm sure it wasn't," replied the friend enthusiastically. "I was on the same road the night before, and I didn't see it." "Well then, that shows it isn't always so great to get up early," said Nasruddin. The friend was dubious and asked, "Oh, why is that?" Nasruddin answered, "Well, because the person who lost that gold must have gotten up earlier than you did." Yeah.
Bada boom.
Yep.
Nasruddin's friends wanted the mullah to kill his biggest, fattest goat and invite them all in for a meal. One day they told him, "Did you hear the news, mullah?" "No, what is it?" Mullah Nasruddin replied. "The world is coming to an end tomorrow," one of his friends said. Upon hearing this, Mullah invited them all over for dinner that night to eat the goat. They came to his house and ate it, but upon finishing, they discovered that Mullah was outside with all of their coats, burning them in a fire. They began protesting with anger, but Mullah interrupted them and said, "Don't you remember that the world is coming to an end tomorrow? What difference does it make if you have your coat or not?"
Oh, Nasruddin.
Yes.
All right, so Nasruddin was talking to his neighbor one day, and the neighbor lamented, "I'm really having trouble fitting my family in our small house. It's me, my wife, 3 kids, and my mother-in-law, all sharing the same cottage. Mullah Nasruddin, you're a wise man. Do you have any advice for me?" "Yes," replied Nasruddin. "Do you have any chickens in your yard?" "I have 10, the man replied. "Put them in the house," said Nasruddin. "But Mullah," the man remarked, "our house is already cramped as it is." Just try it," replied Nasruddin. The man, desperate to find a solution to his spacing woes, followed Nasruddin's advice and paid him another visit the next day. "Mullah," he said, "things are even worse now. With the chickens in the house, we're even more pressed for space." "Now take that donkey of yours," replied Nasruddin, "and bring it into the house." The man bemoaned and objected, but Nasruddin convinced him to do it. The next day, the man, now looking more distressed than ever, came up to Nasruddin and said, "Now my home is even more crowded. Between my family, the chickens, and that donkey of mine, there's barely any room to move." "Well then," said Nasruddin, "do you have any other animals in your yard?" "Yes," the man replied, "we have a goat." "Okay," said the other, "take the goat into your house too." The man once again raised a fuss and seemed anything but eager to follow Nasruddin's advice. But Nasruddin once again convinced him to put yet another animal in the house. The next day, the man, now completely pissed off and furious, came up to Nasruddin and exclaimed, "My family is really upset now. Everyone is at my throat complaining about the lack of space. Your plan is making us miserable." "Okay," Nasruddin replied. "Now take all the animals back outside." So the man followed his advice, and the next day, he dropped by Nasruddin and remarked, "Mullah, your plan has worked like a charm. With all the animals out, my house is so spacious that none of us can help but be pleased and uncomplaining."
Yep.
Yep, I think a lot of people out there can relate to that right now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I like that one.
I do too. So, the Qadi of Mullah Nasruddin's village. Now, Qadi is a judge. He's somebody who has the power of life and death over people, actually. He can actually make judgments. And this Qadi fancied himself a poet. And so he wrote a poem and he read it to Mullah Nasruddin. And then he says, "Did you like the poem, Mullah?" And Nasruddin replied, "Not really. It wasn't very good." The Qadi was enraged and he sentenced Nasruddin to 3 days in jail. The next week, the Qadi called Nasruddin into his office and read him another poem he had written. Then the mayor, when the Qadi finished, he turned to Nasruddin and asked, "Well, what do you think of this one?" Nasruddin didn't say anything and immediately began walking away. The Qadi inquired, "Where do you think you're going?" "To jail," replied Nasruddin. So I think that's enough to keep people smiling for the night.
Yeah.
Remember, it pays to think outside of the box. It pays to find ways to look at things that nobody else has ever looked. And did I tell you how Nasruddin became a saint? Because he's a saint, you know. He is a wali, a friend of God. So when he was a child, he was sent to study Sharia in school, and he had for his teacher a very great Sufi. And Mullah Nasruddin was always playing pranks and making jokes in class, and especially playing little pranks on the teacher. Finally, the teacher got fed up and he cursed the mullah. He laid a curse on him of enlightenment. He said, you will become one of the greatest enlightened beings of our time, but the only way you will ever be able to express that enlightenment to anybody else is through jokes.
Oof. Well, there you go.
Yes.
Stuck with it, buddy.
That's right. So that's what we have for you today.
Yeah. So take it easy. Have a good Friday evening, and
Hang out with your friends. Tell a joke.
even if it's just over the internet. I mean, nothing beats that right now.
Yep.
So take advantage of this opportunity to just take a breather, prepare for the weekend, all that stuff. And we will talk to you tomorrow. Thanks for joining us.
Until then.